Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out People of Reddit. Story 1. Body shame me at my workplace, I'll make sure you get hated for it. A few months ago was another regular day at my job as hostess on a breakfast restaurant. I am a person who is on the heavier side, my complexion doesn't help, as I have a lot of muscle mass and overall my physical aspect looks somewhere between curvy and chubby. My uniform was just a good pair of jeans, sneakers, and a polo shirt with the restaurant's logo. The polo had to be tucked in our jeans during service. It wasn't the most flattering way to use the shirt for me, as it made my belly pooch stand out, but I really didn't have a problem with that, and neither my workmates or clients. It was a Sunday, a busy day for the restaurant in which we had a list of about 45 minutes to 1 hour and 15 minutes. That day the cleaning lady didn't came to work as she was sick, so the chore of cleaning and organizing clutter and menus was on the hostesses. We were walking full speed through the restaurant and it was a really warm day. As a result I started sweating and it was kind of noticeable. When I had a table ready for the next people on the list, I went to the podium with the register notebook to call them when a lady that was registered, but wasn't her turn yet, approached and asked me how her turn was going. I told her that there were still about 8 tables before her and she didn't like that number, and as any hostess has experienced, she started with the talking of, "Can't you make the line move faster? My family and I are hungry, you are lazy and working slowly," to which I just explained that we were working as fast as we could and that the waiting time was merely subject to how fast the clients left, not due to waiting for the drinks or dishes, mostly on how long they overstayed on the table. And she didn't like that either because she even started raising her voice, telling me things among the lines, "Listen to me, piggy, you are working slowly because of how fat you are, you can't even do your job without sweating like the obese person you are, and what lit the light bulb on my head, maybe if you lost weight you wouldn't be so effing slow and actually do your job decently." At that point we had all the attention from all the clients in the waiting area, which were a lot, and regulars that have appreciation for me due to how I had treated them as long as I had been there. This is where the petty thing starts. I got on character and started to make myself have a bit of teary eyes and told her that I would love to lose weight because I just wanted to do things more easily and wanted to get rid of my insecurities, but that it would have to stay as a fantasy because I had hypothyroidism, which is not true, and that didn't allow me to lose weight even if I was on a strict diet and a rigorous workout plan. I let 1 or 2 tears slip from my eyes as I spoke. The regulars started to get angry at her for how she treated me and started to say all kind of things to her, to the point in which she had to leave and drag her family with her due to embarrassment. I got taken to the manager's office to calm down a bit, and just 5 minutes later I was out and resumed my work. It felt nice for her to get embarrassed for shaming someone about things they can't change that easily and quickly, and overall things that are not wrong at all. And for everyone that struggles with weight loss and actually has hypothyroidism, it's okay if the progress is not what you expect. You can't help it, and what you do to take care of yourself is always good, so don't let anyone shame you for something like that. 3. Little edit, I have some. Story 2. Ride my bumper, have fun missing the light. So this is a small dish of petty revenge that happened maybe less than a half hour ago. I was on my way to a CVS before I'd start my work day. Of course, it's about 8:30 a.m. and many people are commuting to work, and as you can imagine, it's commute traffic, so people might be driving like buttholes. Anyway, I am pulling out of my driveway and see a safe distance to pull out without endangering or inconveniencing the driver who will be behind me. I get up to speed limit of 35 miles per hour. And the car behind me is probably going 50 plus and has caught up to me maybe 5 seconds after I got up to the speed limit and begins tailgating hard. Like I'd say half a car length between us and slowly inching closer. So we're approaching an intersection, and she's been tailgating me for a little while at this point. I was a little frustrated because I didn't feel too safe with her behind me, and I hate being rushed or forced to speed. So we're approaching the intersection and she turns her blinker on to take a left turn, whereas I am taking a right. So I start to slow down and the light turns yellow. I slow down maybe an additional 5 miles per hour to force her to either run a red or miss the light. I end up taking my turn during the yellow as it turns to red, and she ended up not going through the intersection and had to wait for the next green light. While pretty minor and only wasting a couple minutes of her time, I thought this was a light case of petty revenge some of you might enjoy. Story 3. Think I'm going to back up and let you go through a one lane when I was already coming through. I often took my break from work in the afternoon in my vehicle. The place I worked did not allow smoking on premises, and, since I was at that time a smoker, I'd grab my current book, drive a few blocks to a city park, and park in the shade or sun, depending on the season, and smoke and read for 10 or 15 minutes. I normally passed a middle school on these trips, and school would normally be getting out just after I went back to the office. The street I used had a long block by the school, with no driveways or streets for about 150 yards. Parents would be parked on both sides of the street, leaving one slim lane for traffic to pass. One day, on the way back, I pulled into the lane, and drove about 30 to 40 yards, when a carload of high school students pulled in from the other end, and accelerated rapidly toward me. They pulled up nose to nose with me, the girl driving honked the horn, and waved at me to back up. The other 3 or 4 boys/girls in the car were likewise waving, some with only one finger. In a very exaggerated manner, I looked over my shoulder at the short distance I would have to back up, turned back around, and very obviously put my vehicle in park, picked up my book, opened to the page I'd stopped on, and held it up where they could see me reading, and ignoring them. They honked and yelled for about 30 seconds, then finally backed up all the way, with me following about 10 feet away. When they reached the end, I pulled up next to them, rolled down my window, smiled, waved, and told them to have a great day. Story 4. Don't want the free weight, okay? So I spent the long weekend doing some major cleaning, and finally decided to haul the dead and broken grill to metal recycling. Being the day after a major holiday, the line to unload was several blocks long. I have one item, have nothing to do, so I don't mind waiting in line, but it isn't worth the energy to cash in, so I hop out of my vehicle to ask the car in front of me if he wanted the points for my grill. I'd just dump it into his bin. Guy thinks I'm trying to cut in line, and won't even listen. Guy in front of him hears the conversation and decides he'll take the grill. He pulls up to the bin, I pull in front of him, we unload my broken grill and tip it in. I say thanks and hop into my truck. The guy who wouldn't listen to my question, gets mad because I just gave my extra weight to the other guy. Story 5. Dishwasher. My workplace have several dish machines, but we don't get any dishwasher tablets, and I've asked so many times. So I have to clean everything by hand next to colleagues who need to get coffee and plates at the same time, so it's always jammed and cuts into my break. I had enough and I poured a generous amount of dishwashing liquid into several dish machines. I basically went from room to room. After an hour my boss had to clean floors and empty every machine, and it almost caused water damage. The image of her sitting on her knees, drenched in water and soap, made me so happy. On my break the next day my colleagues joked that someone probably wanted a special foam party, and I almost choked on my coffee. Suddenly we have so many dishwasher tablets. They are everywhere. Story 6. Be late now. We both made a useless trip. I was supposed to meet a woman after work today for a first friendship date. Making friends as an adult is hard, and Bumble BFF had overall been great. We were meant to meet at 6:15. She says she's 10 minutes late. At 6:30 she says she'll only be there at 6:50. At 6:55 she says she'll be there at 7:10. I'm saying nothing. I had my supper and paid the bill and then waited till she walked in the door. I said she'd wasted my time and left. If I had to waste my time having a trip into town, so do you. At least I got a nice solo date out of it. Story 7. Alcohol doesn't mean you can be an asshole dad. My dad is an alcoholic, in denial, so after a fight where he was just being a drunk asshole, in the middle of that night I carried out a plan. I carefully wiggled off the thin metallic wrap off of a wine bottle, uncorked it, and dumped it out. I kept the cork and wiggled the cap back on. It was wrinkled, but my dad doesn't pay attention to that. I did this for all 7 bottles. I went to class. He went to get a drink. I came home from class. Weirdest thing, I had gotten wine from Costco but they sold me empty bottles. I was standing there arguing with the guy on how this could happen. When I say ILMAOED, I really did. He got a refund and a brand new case of wine, but now he knows that if I can do it once, I can do it again. Planting that seed of fear was so satisfying. He also hates this story because it makes him look like a fool, and that's why I tell this story any chance I get. Story 8. Bucket Woman v the Seaweed Experiment. Obligatory background: Bucket Woman, aka Buckety, hangs around next door to keep an eye on the place. My teenage son suspects she lives in the rafters. Has decidedly eccentric opinions on rubbish bins, garden upkeep, and interior decor, which she is not afraid to share. Fortunately is deterred by jets of cold water from sprinklers. Named because my partner said it was like living next door to Hyacinth Expletive Bucket. More background: Buckety keeps complaining to the council about our unlicensed chickens. We don't have any. Eventually my partner, Martin, joined the dots and worked out she complained every time he put dynamic lifter on the garden. Dynamic lifter is a chook POO based fertilizer, and it reeks. You can get reduced odor versions, but they cost a bit more and we can't be arsed. Then my partner had the idea of making liquid garden fertilizer out of seaweed, aka seaweed tea, because after all, Buckety was complaining about the smell of the dynamic lifter. The basic recipe for seaweed tea starts with: take 1 bucket, with a sealable lid for the sake of humanity, toss in some seaweed and water, seal it and wait. When it stops stinking, after about a month, you know it's done. For some reason, Martin opted to put the bucket of tea behind the house, over by the fence we share with Buckety. We've long suspected Buckety of listening at the fence when Martin and I are out in the garden together. Contrary to her complaints about our garden being an overgrown jungle, there is a gap below the fence and sometimes her bright pink Crocs are seen right up against it. And we sense a presence, silently lurking on the other side. We had a spell of warm weather that made things smell a bit ripe in the bucket. The good weather also meant Martin spent quite a bit of time in the garden. He was filling me in on the latest fight to the death with marauding garden pests when the pink Crocs appeared. I put my finger to my lips and pointed to the fence. Martin gave me a grin, practically skipped over to the bucket of seaweed tea, ripped the lid off, and started wafting the smell towards the fence with the lid. He wafted with his right hand, and buried his nose in the crook of his left arm. I pinched my nose closed. Now if you are like me, and grew up near the beach, you probably have a good idea of what it smelled like. But for anyone who grew up inland, the nearest I can come to describing it is, like the wind from Satan's bowels with a hint of the ocean. Initially there was silence from the other side of the fence, and then a sound like someone hacking up a furball. The pink Crocs disappeared, then there was the sound of someone trying to claw open a screen door. As soon as we heard both doors slam shut, Australian houses often have a screen door, and a more solid door, Martin jammed the lid back on. With classic English understatement, Martin declared the seaweed tea wasn't quite ready yet, and it needed to brew a bit longer. I agreed, with dry Australian humour, that smell was a bit offensive. Then we went inside to make a cup of coffee and have a good old laugh, like the 40-something teenagers that we are. Smells can linger in your nose for up to 20 minutes. So I hope she spent the next 20 minutes checking whether she stepped in something. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.